is Kramer.
Hour number 2, just after 7 o'clock. Let me ask you a question. How often is it that you get to sit down one-on-one with a super attorney? How often is it that you get free advice from an attorney that is not only brilliant, but equally likable? Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the one and the only, the master. All right? Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team is with us. Greetings, your royalty. What is happening? What's going on with Mr. Scott Major? It's been a while.
How you been? How you feeling?
I'm feeling better. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to talk to you. I did miss you. I think on Thursday I missed it.
Yes.
So how are things? What's going on, bud?
Things are great. No complaints, my friend.
Are you talking? Have we got you back for a scheduled event? I'm needing some in the studio time with Mr. Scott Major.
Okay, well then maybe either next week or the week after I'll come up and we'll get some donut time together.
Well, you let me know because I will stock this place with donuts. You know, you want donuts, you got them. Is there anything in the news that's caught your eye? I know Scott is very up. You know, he keeps up with what we talk about on the show often. There's politics and all that. I did see, by the way, where there's a little. Here's something I want to ask you. This is with Jussie Smollett. Okay, this is a part of the news of this story that has not been making any. It's making news in Illinois, but not nationally. There was an appellate court judge that was requesting a special prosecutor to go in and do some investigating of this Jussie Smollett debacle. And then they moved it to another judge, and it got transferred. I think this was last week where it got transferred. And I want to pick your brain a little about what else is going on there and the Smollett thing. How can something be that corrupt and that criminal, Scott?
Yeah, it's again an unfortunate situation where justice is not being served, and whether you're Democrat or Republican, Asian, African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter, color, creed, gender. What happened here was horrific. It was a leverage of political proportion that is disturbing, and the justice that should have been served was not. Now, that doesn't mean that he won't eventually be charged, because I believe the federal authorities still have the ability to charge him with mail fraud and some of those other crimes, which would be the appropriate thing that will eventually happen. But I'll tell you, the injustice of what occurred is just frightening. They had tremendous amount of footage showing the preparation for the crime. Mm-hmm. Two gentlemen, who were, conspiring with him to do this, have already admitted that he did that. The city is going to expose him in their lawsuit, and this investigation, I think, is going to show a disturbing trend that has happened where, wealthy people are buying their way out of justice. And it's just, it's so obvious to all of us that I think that's where the frustration comes for most of us, is that we see this obviously guilty person, and while we want to give them the presumption of innocence, and we all give it to them, we also don't want them to walk free, in today's society. It's ironic that an African-American person goes free and nobody's jumping up and down and complaining about that. It's only when they feel that the African-American hasn't been treated properly that they're screaming about racism and bigotry and horrific, treatment. And I just think the reason why you don't see people covering this is because it would be against their message. It would destroy their message to admit that somebody of color got preferential treatment, because that would be horrible. So I think that it's just disgusting, and I hope that this investigation yields something, and that the federal authorities eventually charge him so that justice can be served. If he had not done this, if there had been evidence of his innocence that was clear, if these two co-conspirators had said, no, we weren't involved, if you had those kinds of things, then you could understand the discretionary, the prosecutorial discretion in not charging. But it's a society that is unraveling before our eyes, and all of us are trying to, develop a moral, character-based society that we all want to be happy about, and these kinds of things disrupt that. And I just hope that we can all band together and recognize that we do have a good society. We just have to hold our politicians and other people accountable when they abuse the system for personal gain. And eventually these left-leaning, crazy socialist-type policies will end up reverberating back to a system where people are going to look back and laugh at these things and say, I can't believe that we're endorsing those things. The idea that some of this free health care for all, free health care for illegal immigrants, free school for everyone, stipends for everyone, is not going to cost us any money, or get rid of the cows and get rid of the planes is somehow some sort of logical thing, is so preposterous that nobody really endorses that. And, most even Democrats, secretly, they don't want to admit it. They don't endorse it either. And they're all enjoying this economy, by the way. And they're keeping quiet about the economy while they bash Trump. I'm just still waiting, as I've mentioned in several shows, I'm just still waiting for all of these people who are so into this, Green Deal and stuff. I'm still waiting for them to pony up their 70% of taxes to set an example, to show that they believe so much in that they're willing to pony up all this money, all these people, Zuckerberg and other people who apparently are of the Democratic, persuasion. I'm surprised he hasn't taken, $400 million and said, I'm volunteering this money because I'm behind the Democrats 100%. Again, I think he's probably maybe he's a great guy. But to me, it just shows you that, it's more about anti-Trump than it is about pro-Democrat. And that's just the sad thing that's going on, and I think that the media is so strong. You talk about interference with an election and influencing an election and illegal campaign contributions. If you think about it legally, the actual media is getting involved in a campaign and endorsing a campaign and moving a campaign. And they're not properly disclosing themselves for the contributions they're making, for all the free advertising they're giving to influence the 2020 election. Because, if you give a free radio show, for example, to President Trump, you have to get some money for that, because otherwise it constitutes a campaign contribution and you have to report it. So why isn't CNN and MSNBC, having to report billions or hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars of advertisement that they've done over all these years to help the upcoming election? How do you like that?
Oh my God, what a brilliant discourse you gave there. Look, I agree that absolutely. I normally agree with what you say, but I got to tell you, I do agree that a lot of things are happening because people don't like Donald Trump, and we in the Panhandle have been affected by that. And I think. I really do think, and I think a lot of people have this idea as well. I can speak for Congressman Neil Dunn. He's been on the show. He's said the same thing. A lot of what's happening or not happening with funding coming to the Panhandle basically comes from a dislike of Trump. It's a political thing between Pelosi and Schumer and Donald Trump and the GOP, and they're not getting anything done. They fill these bills with all this crap. They throw in Puerto Rico. They throw in the border wall. It becomes this big political back and forth. It's a volley, and nobody ever winds up passing anything because of all those political ideas that are structured inside one bill. I don't get, why can we not just present a bill that is for hurricane micro relief, send it, vote, send the cash. Let's go. There's a lot of that's going on.
Back up the 18-wheeler, as we talked about. Bring all the FEMA trailers, as we talked about. In other words, it's very political. And I just think, again, who are people hurting? It's these, few politicians that are destroying the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people in the Panhandle because of their personal vendetta or because they don't like the results of the election. It's unfortunate because we all just want, great health care and great education and low drug prices and infrastructure and our roads fixed and our buildings fixed. We all want that. And secretly, if you asked Democrats who purportedly support the Democratic Party, they'd all say the same. None of them would say that. None of them want super high taxes, even if they espouse it because it's under an agenda. None of them want to get rid of cows, okay? None of them want to get rid of planes, okay? But the bottom line is it's just unfortunate that we can't get through them because the few politicians have partnered with the media in this crusade, a failing crusade, I think you will find, but this crusade, imagine what's going to happen when Trump wins the election. When Trump wins the election in 2020, they'll have nothing to scream about because he'll have his next term in place. Imagine if they look back and said, let's take the time now and work together to get funds to the Panhandle, to get better schools, better jobs, better economic situation, to continue to improve our society. Let's work on that as a team. And then we can fight on the side about whether Donald Trump Jr., who's given 29 hours of testimony, should somehow come back because Jerry Nadler wants his 15 minutes of fame on television, so he's got to make up some nonsensical lunacy in order to try to distract the people, unconvincingly, I might add, distract the people from reality.
I think what's happening and what we're seeing is that you have Democrats that are kind of being backed into a corner in that, they can't talk about the economy because the economy's doing well. They can't talk about border security because we're on it. They can't talk about national trade. They can't talk about this, that, and the other thing. So they have to have something to stand on, and it seems it's entertaining, actually, to watch as people like Ocasio-Cortez or Bill de Blasio up in New York or Schumer or pick the one, where the only stance they have, the only talking points is the Earth's going to end in 12 years or that cows are farting and that we've got to roll back our use of airplanes. And it's making them look more and more ridiculous. The same thing with this whole Mueller report and the aftermath of that with Barr. It just goes on, and they're kicking the can down the road. And while they're doing that, I don't even think that they consider that they're wasting time. And then all they got to throw at us is Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. So good luck.
And I agree with you totally. And I'll tell you that I think that what's just unfortunate about this, and again, it doesn't matter whether you're of Democratic persuasion or Republican persuasion, we want stuff done for us. We want to rebuild our roads. We want to improve our educational system. We want to lower, drug prices. We want to do things that's going to help us. We want to help, health care prices be able to be more reasonable. You can't have that when there's this constant bickering and stuff regarding the Mueller report. You're going to find out that when this investigation is done, you're going to find that high-ranking officials, including people like Comey and other people, may be indicted. And you're going to find that this nonsense that's occurred is going to reveal to the American public that what we believed was true, and that was there was a distraction and an attempt backed by the media to destroy Trump. Listen, you can attack Trump all you want. You can disagree. We can disagree. But the bottom line is it's not about that. It's about bettering our society. It's about taking the time as people to try to solve our problems. What's wrong with getting money to people in the Panhandle? What's wrong with helping them out by getting the FEMA trailers out there? What's wrong with getting money quicker to you guys so you can solve the problems that are real? They're not fake. They're real. There are problems with housing. There are problems with rebuilding. There are problems with infrastructure. What is wrong? What is so undemocratic about simply helping people that have been devastated, destroyed by a Category 5 hurricane, one of the worst hurricanes in the history of mankind? What is un-American or what is undemocratic about helping them? Why isn't everybody screaming at the top of the hills that we should be getting money to you guys?
Yeah.
And that just shows you it's an epitome of what's wrong with the system and why we're all frustrated, because those kinds of things are simple and real and should be completed.
I'm so glad to hear somebody else frustrated and to put it into words the way it needs to be done. Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team. Our phones are open. Rick, you sit tight. I'll get to you in a second. If you've got a question about post-Hurricane Michael stuff, you got one of the best attorneys in the business right here on the phone for free advice. 850-233-9988. 850-233-9988.
The Kramer Show. Unfortunately, we'll be right back. This is News Talk at 101. This is the Kramer Show. News Talk at 101.
You know, we have Scott Major on, and we get phone calls off the air. People going, hey, how can I get in touch with Scott Major? Their number, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. I overheard just now Rachel take a phone call from somebody who was wanting his number, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. Scott Major. Let's go back to Rick. Rick, you're on the air. Thanks for holding, sir. Go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. How you guys doing this morning?
Super. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Got a question for Scott. I hired a public adjuster who finally was able to get my money from my insurance company about 2 weeks ago. Finally got a settlement. Sent the checks down to my adjuster, had him sign them. I signed them for the mortgage company. Mortgage company has not rendered payment to or will not release funds for me to pay my public adjuster. They left me a voicemail yesterday afternoon saying they will not do so. If there's any funds left over after construction, then at that point I can pay them with whatever funds are left over. The check was obviously clearly endorsed to him as well as I and the mortgage company. What can I do with this situation, Scott?
Okay, sure. The first thing that I tell listeners, it's a general rule, is don't endorse checks over to the mortgage company until you have reviewed the mortgage documents and you know what the intention of the mortgage company is. But once you've done that, the important thing is for the adjuster, he should write a civil theft letter, which is under Chapter 812 and 772, which says that you are essentially stealing my money and that you have 30 days to pay the amount of money or you'll be sued for civil theft, triple the amount of damages, and, plus attorney fees. And the next thing you should do is you can write the mortgage company and have them explain to you in writing, dear mortgage company, I understand that you're refusing to pay monies to the appropriate people. Please explain in writing specifically what provision in your mortgage allows you to unilaterally refuse to pay people that are on a check. Love to hear from you in the next 2 business days. Love and kisses you. And if they don't respond effectively, you can also report them to the state and to federal authorities. So those are the kinds of things that you all should do. It's important for people to understand that the mortgage companies are, unfortunately, a lot of them are making up their own real rules, keeping money that they shouldn't have, and inconsistent with what the terms of their mortgage is. There are some mortgages that have specific language that allow them to use the money in certain ways, but the purpose of the money is not for them to pay down their mortgage. That's not what the clauses say. The purpose is to ensure that your property is properly fixed. So I encourage all people to make sure in the future that they do not have the mortgage company be the last signer on the check until such time as they're absolutely positive that they know what their rights are and what the mortgage company is going to do with them. The next thing you can do, and the last thing I would say, is you can call up a supervisor or a manager of the mortgage company, more up the food chain, and you can ask them to tell you in writing or on the phone exactly what the reason is that they are taking money from somebody that has nothing to do with them and keeping that money improperly. Those are the suggestions I have for you. All of them are good remedies, and they'll be very successful for you. And if you have any problems, pick up the phone and call us, and we'll help you with any of that stuff.
All right, I greatly appreciate it. It's just very disheartening. 7 months later, I'm finally getting my money from my insurance company. Now I got to fight with my mortgage company. This is just, ridiculous.
It's disheartening is a complimentary thing to say. I would use a different word. I'd say it's disgusting. I would say it's reprehensible. I would say it's an act of lunacy. And I would say that I hope that you use every bit of your legitimate power to hold them accountable for what they've done.
Yes, sir. And I just want to say thank you for all the great information that you put out. I love every day that Kramer has you on. I love hearing all your advice that you're giving all these people who are in need. It's a great service that you're doing for all of us, and I appreciate it.
I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much, and I'm glad I'm making a difference in the community.
Thank you so much. So as far as threatening of suit, that's something that he needs to do. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct.
Nothing. Okay.
Yes.
All righty. Well, I greatly appreciate the help, sir.
Have a great day.
Just seems like so many people are at that point where they're having to deal with that, and people don't know what to do, trying to get the word out. Scott Major is on 850-233-9988. If you got a question for Scott, hop on the air. 850-233-9988.
This is Kramer. News Talk at 101. News Talk at 101 and Kramer. Live and local in the mornings.
734, Scott Major joining us. Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team. You want to get on the air, you want to talk to Scott, light him up. You can also call him at 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. Scott's been handling insurance claims and insurance cases for over 30 years, and obviously by listening to him, you know that he knows what he's talking about. What are some things that recently you've been seeing, talking to people about? I know that people have gotten checks and they're less than what people are wanting or needing. I know that's huge. It seems like everybody I talk to around here is going through that particular scenario right now.
Yeah, at this stage, the most common problem is that people are not being fully paid. There are still quite a few people that are not getting paid at all, but the lion's share of people are getting paid something, but it is far less than they even imagined or expected. And so they're having to get lawyers involved. I mean, I get as many calls from public adjusters as I do from individuals. I get calls from roofers and general contractors who are wanting me to help them and their clients to get money. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get a lawyer involved if you have not received all of your money, or you have not received at least what the insurance company has said. Let me say that more clearly. If any of listener is out there who has received an estimate from the insurance company for any amount of money, $1,000 or $100,000, and you have not been paid, it is critical that you immediately get a lawyer involved so that you can file a civil remedies notice, a complaint with the state, and you can get a suit filed or a demand out, because the insurance company has a duty to at least pay what they agree. Now, if you have your own estimate on top of that and it's more, then you should be writing them the famous Love and Kisses letter that explains that you have an estimate and that they need to describe in detail why they're not paying your estimate, or what part of what page of what item do they believe is not worthy and why. And they need to let you know within 2, 3, 4, 5 business days. Love and Kisses you, because these are important times right now. And you want to make sure that you have properly done everything that the insurance policy requires. There's a number of deadlines at the 6-month and 8-month, 9-month mark regarding you having to make sure you've notified the insurance company of what kind of repairs you've already made or will make. There's all kinds of policy language that comes into play here that can restrict your ability to recover. So it is critically important, if you have not been fully paid, please call a lawyer, get a lawyer involved, either dial us or pick your favorite lawyer, and make sure you get somebody who has a lot of experience. Ask them, have they handled 500 claims or more? Have they pursued other insurance companies, before in the past, because it's important to make sure you do all the right things as quickly as possible. It's difficult sometimes, even when you have a lawyer, to get immediately paid, but it's almost impossible without one.
Yeah, my wife works for Continental Public Adjusters, and Mike Rump, those guys, they were on with us around the same time that you initially got on. They'd been on for quite a while. And,
I spoke to him yesterday.
Yeah, I know, and I love them, and they reached out and they said, hey, Scott Major's on the show. What's the number? How do we contact him? So I know they called you up, and I'm sure that, a public adjuster, the way that they operate, teamed up with somebody like you, would be a force to be reckoned with from, the insurance companies. So really important. 850-233-9988. Let me go to Cliff. Cliff, you're up with Scott Major.
I've got a couple of bumps I've run into with my insurance company. For one, the first thing is my windows were not rated for the winds that we had with a hurricane, and I've had a lot of people say that they're automatically, they're automatically have been messed up if they've been subject to winds higher than their rating. And I've had a problem with a screened-in enclosure. They'll want to pay for the structure but not the screen, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Okay, so let's talk about both of those. As I've advocated, thanks for the call, as I've advocated, every single listener, every person in America should be having their windows checked, because most of the windows were affected by the storm and are damaged and in need of repair or replacement, even though they seem to be functional, because of the positive negative pressures that were exerted on those windows with 170 mile an hour winds and winds for lengthy period of times in excess of 100 miles an hour. So every listener, make sure you've either put in a claim for your windows or you've had them properly examined by an engineer or someone else. The second consideration, what was the other consideration you said they didn't pay on?
The screen for his enclosure?
So
they don't want to pay for the screen. They'll pay for the structure, but not the screen.
Sir, you have to look at your insurance policy, because there are a number of insurance policies that actually exclude the screen enclosure, and you have to look at your policy because sometimes there's confusing language in there that will actually give you coverage for the screen, even though it doesn't appear as though they give you coverage for the screen, because there's something called a give back or a provision that says certain situations where there's exclusions, they'll still cover it. So I would encourage you to have them point you to the specific language in the insurance policy where it says your screen enclosure is excluded, and then look at that language and see if it meets up with what they say, number one. Number two, take that language and call your insurance agent and ask him if he or she agrees, and if so, ask them why it is they didn't offer you coverage for that screen enclosure. If they don't agree, obviously you have a complaint you could file with the state against them for wrongfully denying your claim. But the current is to set up these levels of review so that you have thoroughly examined the possibilities.
Hey, Scott, they're not saying that the screen-in enclosure in its entirety is not covered. They're saying that they just won't pay for the screen itself. They'll pay for the structure. It was connected to the house, but they don't want to pay for the screen that goes in the structure.
Yeah, I would love for you to call me and have me handle that case, because I'd love to hear the explanation for why they're going to fix a screen enclosure but not a screen. I'd love to see that language. I've only been doing this for a little while, and I've never heard in my entire career of an insurance company not paying for a screen but paying for every other aspect of the screen. But, maybe I'll be surprised. So, I'd encourage you to proceed forward, either me or somebody else, because you're probably going to get recovery for that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your help.
Have a great day. You be well, and thanks for the call.
Yeah, it's odd. I sitting here and listening to this show for months and months and hearing the phone calls asking you about certain things that are insured or not insured, it really is kind of a learning process. And as I'm listening to it, you realize you almost have to be an insurance professional in order to sit down and to get a proper policy. Number one.
There's
Number
no
two,
doubt about it. You and I have talked about this. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I apologize.
No. I don't.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you and I have talked about this. You need to sit down as a listener, and you need to look at your entire home or your commercial building or whatever it is, and you need to say, in a perfect world, if I'm queen or king for a day, what do I want covered? What do I need covered? So you might say, I don't care if the carpet gets ruined because it's not a big deal, it's not a big expense. Or I don't care if the front door gets ruined. What I care about is my roof and other things. Or I want everything covered. And whatever it is that you want, now that you've had this experience, you need to sit down with your agent and say, I've identified everything that needs to be covered. And let me back up in time. Your agent's duty is to make sure you're covered. So many of these agents sold policies, not meanfully, but sold insurance policies and did not thoroughly, go through and explain to the buyer, to all of you that are listening, did not explain to you that there were different kinds of coverages available and that you could have gotten, law and ordinance or code upgrade, or you could have gotten more contents or more additional living expenses or more other things. They didn't explain it to you, and you didn't even know to ask, and you wouldn't know to ask because you're relying on them as professionals. So it's a real problem that we see all the time after these storms, and I always have education on buying a new insurance policy. And you and I should set aside, several hours, maybe one morning, and go over all of the policies and say, here are the common things that we believe you should have coverage for, and here's the experiences that people have. Now, there might not be another Category 5 storm coming up, but there's certainly things which can affect your life, which can happen that you would want more for that would not cost you much, like buying more contents coverage or buying more additional living expenses coverage is not very expensive. It's very cheap, very inexpensive to get. And you can buy even layered policies, as I mentioned, when you have condominiums or you have buildings. You can buy one policy that's $1 million, for example. Let's say it's a $20 million building. And then you can buy an excess policy on top of that. It is way cheaper than buying one $20 million policy. And you can do that in such a way that's very, very reasonable, very inexpensive compared to buying one giant policy and saying it's going to be too expensive. Those are really important things.
There are times, too, where, haven't you said before that you can sue for undercoverage? In other words, if you go to an insurance agent and you go, hey, I need insurance, and then they sit down with you and they go, well, we're going to exclude this, we're going to exclude that, but they don't tell you just so that they can lower the price and get you to get their, use them. Isn't that egregious, and can't you eventually sometimes sue for that?
Absolutely. If there's loads of cases out there, even right now, thousands and thousands of cases where somebody has not been properly educated on how to insure their property. And they have liability. We get done with all these claims and we find out the reason why you didn't get paid is because you didn't buy screen and enclosure insurance that your agent knew about and didn't give you. There's a liability there. I tell agents, if you're smart, you'll call Scott Major as an agent and you'll have him sue the insurance company for every dollar you can get, because otherwise they're going to be coming after you, because a lot of these people didn't get coverage and didn't know and relied on their agent to tell them that they need this much coverage, and the agent either told them nothing or said, I've got you taken care of. And so that's the tragedy out there, that a lot of these policies, people don't even know what they bought because they weren't educated on that. So while there are good agents out there are real problems with some of the coverage that was sold. Real problems.
I was going to say, it'd be different if they sat you down and said, okay, now that this is not covered, the screen enclosure, that's not covered, this is not covered, the pool, the whatever. If they do that and then you knowingly sign on the dotted line so that you can get a discount on the insurance, that's different. But if they sit down and they say, okay, well, I took some things off, we got it down there, we got it down to such and such price, and then a hurricane happens, and then you realize that, well, 50% of my stuff wasn't even insured, that's, a different story.
And you're 100% right.
Let's go to Wayne. Wayne, you're up with Scott Major. Go ahead, bud.
Well, Scott, I have a question regarding making the when I make the final payment to the contractor. What kind of documents do I need to have from him that the subs and his material suppliers have all been satisfied, so I don't have lien waivers coming back? Or not lien waivers, but the
lien claims.
Lien claim, right? Thank you. Filed against me.
Sure. I could spend an entire show of this, but generally speaking, you want something called a release of lien. These are documents where the contractor asserts that he has paid every one of the subcontractors and they are all releasing their liens. My recommendation to every listener is to tell your contractor to write you a letter or an email that says, here's every vendor that has, subcontractor that has performed any services or supplied any materials to your property, and I am attesting under oath or under penalty of perjury that I have secured releases of liens from every one of them. You get that, and then you have them sign a release of lien, and it will protect you in large part for every single lien that's out there. If they turn out to be wrong, then the contractor will have problems, him or herself or itself. So those are my initial recommendations. We could spend a lot of time in the way we craft contracts to begin with, but in terms of releasing them, that's a great start.
So, in other words, the contractor provides me with a lien release. He doesn't have to give me one from all the subs and material suppliers that he has used in this. And then, if that's true, does he then have to, on that release, list all the people, or just him saying that everybody that works on this job has been paid properly?
Sure. What I would recommend you do is, step one, get the contractor to write you a letter or an email or something that says, here's all the vendors and suppliers. Then have him collect releases from every one of them, and then give you a release of lien that encompasses all of those other releases. And this way, you don't have anybody that can make a claim for labor and materials against you. That is the best way to do it, and every honorable contractor will gladly do that. And it's really important that you, as a listener, that you take a moment, you get your contractor, your roofer, whoever it is that's worked for you, to both write you a letter telling you every supplier, contractor, labor that's worked on the job, that has supplied materials that could be the subject of a lien, and that you get releases of lien from them. It's a form document that's used all over the state. You can either call the 844-800-LAWS number, we'll send you one, or you can look online, type in Florida release of lien, and you'll see loads of samples that will pull up. But every contractor and subcontractor has them themselves. So hopefully that helps you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day, and best of luck to you.
There you go. Another one down. Wayne, thank you for the phone call. Scott Major on the phone. You can call Scott Major off the air at 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. Their website, stormhelpteam.org. More with Scott Major coming up. Stand by.
More Kramer coming up. Oh, and if you're thinking of making a complaint call to management right now, don't bother. His dad owns the station. News Talk at 101.